This week, let's chill a bit with this green little tutorial for lazy people like me. Buckle up. Add a 2D isometric tile map grid and an empty game object as its child and name it Grid Manager. And add a Grid Manager script to it. Now let's expose a reference to our grid and a public variable representing grid size. We'll set it to 44 to match Clash of Clans. Let's create a function getCorners. Let's add these to expose values for corners on the grid where we will be placing our buildings. Let's assign the origin, end, left and right corners. Now create onDrawGizmos method to preview this in the screen. Let's call getCorners, set a color and draw the lines through the corners. Now let's adjust the background image to match the playground. Let's set the orthographic camera size and edit the camera bounds we created in the last video to match the background image. And once again, let's adjust the min and max values of the controller we created in the last video so that our camera moves correctly inside the bounds. Let's import the building base and town hall images downloaded from the description, create an empty game object and add the base image into it. And to the parent game object of the base image, add a sorting group component with a higher value than that of the background. Now resize it such that it takes 4x4 grid space because Clash of Clans town hall dimension is the same. Then add the town hall image into it, scale it appropriately and let's make the base image transparent by setting its opacity to 0. Now let's make it a prefab by dragging it down into a folder, open the prefab and add a building script. Let's create a bool variable to check if the building is selected and let's add a private grid manager variable. Then in grid manager script, let's make it a singleton by adding an instance variable and also a public grid variable because we'll be accessing it later. Then initialize the instance variable in awake method. Then in building script start method, initialize the grid manager instance. And let's create a handle building placement method. This will be executed only if building is selected. Let's get screen position of the pointer. Let's convert the screen position of the pointer to world position and let's get the corresponding grid cell based on the pointer position. Let's clamp the cell position based on the grid size because we don't want the building to move outside the playground. Then let's get the grid center position and set the building's position to cell center and call this handle building placement function in the update method. And to toggle the building selection, expose the public method setSelected. This will set each selected variable's value to whatever is passed to the function. Then let's go to our input action and create a new action select. Add a hold interaction to it and add a binding assigned to mouse left click for now. Now in the controller script, let's expose a public onSelect method with input action context parameter. Then set a variable to hold the state of hold interaction and create this variable. Now create a handle selection method and if selection is initiated then call a handle selection scanning method. In this method we'll write the code to select selectable items. So once again, let's get the pointer position, convert it to world position and let's cast a ray. And also let's isolate this ray with a layer mask. We'll check if it has a collider and if it does, set it as current selected object. Well, that means we need a collider on our building, so we'll do that in a while. Then in handle selection, let's scan for the selectables only if selection scanning is allowed. We'll get to this shortly. And if we have a selected object with a building script component, we'll stop selection scanning because we don't want to check for selection when we already have a selected building. And also let's notify the building that it's selected. And if we are no longer in the hold interaction, and if we have a selected object that has a building script component, then let's notify the building that it's no longer selected. And also let's reset stop selection scanning variable and current selected object. And to finish it up, call the handle selection function in the update method. Now let's add a 2D box collider to the building, set it as trigger and then create a new layer, I'm calling it selectables and assign it to the building. In the controller game objects player input, let's invoke controller scripts onSelect method and set selection layer mask in the script to selectables layer that we created. Cool, we can select and place the buildings now. And just as a bonus thing, let's add a blink effect when building is selected. In the building script, let's create a sprite render state class and declare sprite render and color variable and assign this in the constructor. We'll use this class to hold the default states of the sprite renders in the child objects. Then in the building class, let's declare sprite render states variable and a boolean to check if sprite renders are modified. In a wake method, let's get all the sprite renders in the children and let's loop through these sprite renders and create and store sprite render state instance for each of the sprite render. It's so freaking hard to pronounce sprite render. Then let's create a handle selection effect private method, and if selected, set sprite rendered modified to true. Let's compute a new alpha value which will follow a sine wave pattern for that blink effect. And from the sprite render states, let's set this alpha to each of the sprite render. And if the building is not selected but sprite render states are modified, then let's set the modified flag to false and reset the sprite renders using the state values. And that's it. We have building selection and placement on isometric grid working. Like and subscribe.